Hello, I'm going to interpret the birth chart of Janis Joplin. I'm going to be interpreting harmonic charts. If you're not familiar with harmonic charts, I have a link to a video that explains harmonic charts. This is part 8 in a series of 14 tutorial videos on the birth charts of musicians, where we interpret the birth charts using a system of astrology known as Vibrational Astrology. I have a link here at the bottom to the first video in the series that also has links to all 14 videos in this series. Okay, Janis Joplin, let's get an idea of who she is in case you're not familiar with the details. She's an intense blues rock singer. She was influenced by I can't speak correctly. Influenced by black blues musicians. She has a very raw and intense voice. She was a heavy drug user. For short periods of time, she was able to stop using the drugs and then got involved again. She died at age 27 from drug overdose. The magazine Rolling Stone, I'm going to quote here from Wikipedia, ranked Janis Joplin number 46 on its list of 100 greatest artists of all time in 2004. That's amazing, to be in the top 100 artists of all time in rock and roll. So she's a big deal. She's one of the top. She was ranked number 28 in 2008 of the 100 greatest singers of all time. She was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1985, etc. Okay, so she's considered to be an outstanding rock singer. I didn't know that she was considered to be that outstanding. I mean, I know her voice. It has this kind of raw intensity to it. But she's, ranked at that level. What we expect in rock and roll musicians who are intense like this is usually 11th harmonic. Sometimes if they're very creative, we'll see the 55th harmonic if they're songwriters, music arrangers, etc. And I didn't expect this, but she also has a strong 35th harmonic. I also didn't expect that in the chart of Jimi Hendrix, if you've watched the tutorial video on Jimi Hendrix. The 35th harmonic gives this potential for extreme talent, refinement, high level of skill and technique. Okay, now I say I didn't expect it. I'm not an expert on Janis Joplin, but just my vague impression of who she is. Okay, so let's look at her 11th harmonic. There are two things we look at in the harmonic charts. We look at aspect patterns and midpoint patterns, and she has a gigantic midpoint pattern. These purple lines indicate the midpoint patterns. The arrow shows which planet is in the middle. In her 11th harmonic chart, she's got a very close Uranus-Pluto conjunction, 1 degree orb. And then Venus is in between that Uranus-Pluto conjunction and Jupiter. We see that here in the midpoint trees. Venus opposition the Jupiter-Pluto midpoint 2-minute orb, and also the Jupiter-Uranus midpoint, very tight, 24-minute orb. So this Uranus and Pluto conjunction and the Jupiter combining together onto the Venus. So here we see music, vibrancy, electricity, also bouncy, vibrant feeling. We wouldn't expect as much emphasis on the blues, more of a swing sort of sound. So that's a little bit surprising. But we see this high energy activity, the desire to celebrate. She's a big party person, so we see that. She has Pluto at the Sun-Venus midpoint, gives that charisma, personal charisma in this. Mars at Jupiter-Uranus. This is over a degree orb, but still there. So we're seeing ambition, drive, freedom. So she's a free spirit, active, and ambitious. So a huge pattern formed by these planets that are, they're almost like in a grand cross kind of thing. They're all spread out all over the chart. Okay, so that makes sense. It doesn't explain her heavy drug use. Doesn't explain this blues kind of style, but we do see the big, vibrant, powerful 11th harmonic. She's a party person. She's a dynamic, high-energy person. So it makes sense, but it doesn't explain everything. We look at the 55th harmonic, and it is extremely powerful. This is so strong. It surprised me. I think of her as primarily a singer with all this soul and this intensity. But this is showing she's highly creative, inventive. She's not just a performer. She's got all kinds of interesting creative ideas. And we see, for example, the Sun opposite the Venus-Uranus midpoint with a 3-minute orb. Venus-Uranus has a lot to do with rhythm. It shows up with dance and music. It's in the 55th. This indicates innovative music. And, innovation is perhaps not what she's most known for. We can read more about the biographies, but I believe if we look into this, we're going to see it's true, and I'm going to show you a few things about her biography that will indicate that this is true. So, huge 55th harmonic. She does have the capacity to arrange music, to write music. Now, remember, she dies at 27 years old. So when somebody dies that young, we don't get to find out what else would have happened. I'm sure a lot of this would have become more obvious if she lived longer. Okay. 35th harmonic. Now this surprised me. The level of development of her 35th harmonic chart indicates that she is sophisticated. Great technique. And if she would have lived longer, I know that this would have become more obvious. And what's very interesting is the rock star combo is here. The Venus, Uranus, Pluto. Here's Uranus, right in between Venus and Pluto, making sesquiquadrats. Uranus makes sesquiquadrats to Venus and Pluto. Venus and Pluto are squared. And in fact, it's a Saturn-Uranus opposition squeezed between the Venus-Pluto square. And you see all the aspect lines are drawn, meaning they're all within orb. So we see the rock power combination, Venus, Uranus, Pluto, but it's in 35th harmonic, meaning she's much more sophisticated, much more mature, much more wanting to get things down, not just wild, screaming, out of control, blow your brains out rock and roll. There's more going on. And again, she dies very young. We didn't get to see all of this developed, but from some of the biographical information, we'll see that this is true. There's also reinforcing midpoint structures. Let's see, there's the Mars at opposition Mercury-Saturn, indicating that she would practice, she would get things down. I think we only scratched the surface of who Janis Joplin was in her very short lifetime. But think about it. How does someone get to be this magnificent, this advanced, to be among the top 100 of all time and having only lived a short life? There's got to be something there, and I think there's a lot more to Janis Joplin than just the raw voice and the intensity that we hear. For those of us who are not super rock fans and don't know the inside story, she's got extreme talent, both in the 55th, showing the creativity, and she works. She's not just a party girl. 35th harmonic means she understands excellence. She strives for excellence. So we're going to see that this is true, that people who can see the refinement and perfection of technique, she recognizes it and she strives for it. So there's more going on with her, and I think that these are a lot of the forces that propelled her to be a superstar. So, like Jimi Hendrix, she has a strong 35th harmonic pattern. She's got the Venus, Uranus, Pluto with Saturn in hard aspect. Now, here's a quote from this website, janisjoplin.net, and here's the exact website address if you want to check it out. I'll read this quote. Paradoxically, she died partly because she was a workaholic as well as a party animal. Okay, let me interrupt right there. So that's something we didn't know about her, just superficially. This person saying, who knows her well, that she was a workaholic. I believe it. Where does workaholic come from? Well, largely from the 35th harmonic. 35th harmonic doesn't mean you're a workaholic, but it means you're serious. It means you're dedicated to technique. You want to be perfected in what you do. You can call that workaholic, or you can call it practice, practice, practice. But she's not just somebody who gets up, belts out this bluesy rock intensity, and then just goes and does her drugs and out of control. That's one part of her life. But she is dedicated. So workaholic, I think, is a fair word, and we see that in the 35th harmonic. Okay, to continue with this. Heroin left her fresher. So, okay, let me interrupt again. She uses a lot of heroin. It says later that she didn't experiment much with LSD and marijuana and some things that were very popular at the time, but she was a heavy heroin user. Okay, to continue. Heroin left her fresher for rehearsals the next day than booze did, and being up for rehearsal was essential to Joplin. Again, contrary to myth, each Joplin shriek and growl was carefully practiced, painstakingly recorded. She'd come up with those things spontaneously, says Andrew, and then get them down cold. Okay, so I know that this is true. I know it's true because I've seen her 35th harmonic chart. This is a person who practiced, painstakingly recorded, carefully practices these things. Okay, now what we still haven't seen is why the alcohol and drug abuse, and why was she extremely wild. We see the vibrancy in the 11th, but not the wild to the point of the alcohol and drug abuse. And also this alcohol and drug abuse obviously interfered with her 35th harmonic potential. So she was trying to do her 35th harmonic thing. She even regulated her drug use, according to this fellow, by emphasizing drugs that wouldn't slow her down and prevent her from being up early and at practicing and so on. Okay, but where is the drug abuse and stuff? We'll see that as we look at some more of these harmonic charts. Now, another interesting thing about the 35th harmonic. Okay, this big 35th harmonic pattern, Venus, Uranus, Pluto with Saturn, and there's also midpoint structures. This is interesting. From an early age, she's attracted to masters of blues and jazz music like Bessie Smith, Odetta, Big Mama Thornton, Billie Holiday, and Leadbelly. These are black musicians in the jazz and blues traditions, and these people are masters. I mean, they have technique. They perform with elegance. They're very sophisticated. She's growing up in this, I guess it's a small town in Texas, very country sort of thing, and she's attracted to this sophisticated music from a different culture. She's white, and she's gravitated into the black cultural history somehow. And we'll see how, astrologically in a minute, but I want to emphasize the sophistication that she's attracted to. So if you want to read more about this, I've got the website here. So two unusual things. The musical sophistication she's attracted to, not surprising given her 35th harmonic, and why is she attracted to a different culture, black musicians? She kind of crosses a cultural line. We'll see why. In fact, we'll see it right now. I'm going to describe this now. Okay, here's her birth chart. And she's got this kind of a grand trine. It's a grand trine pretty weak by my standards. So we see near the beginning of the air signs, towards the end of the earth signs, we see Neptune, early Libra, Uranus and Saturn, early Gemini, and we see Sun, late Capricorn, Mercury, early Aquarius. So these 5 planets, Sun and Mercury, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, are all roughly in a grand trine. Now, what makes this very, very powerful is that some of the planets are landing right in between 2 others. In other words, there are midpoint structures going on. And here we have some of them. Uranus opposite Sun, Neptune, 25 minutes, under half a degree. It's going to be very powerful. So this Uranus over here, right in between Sun, Neptune. Well, Sun, Uranus, Neptune is the classic combination for drug use. Is unfortunately one of the most common ways it manifests. People want to be lifted up, inspired, and have a vision now. Uranus, Sun, let's go there, let's experience it. So the impatience, the desire to wake up and be alive, and the drudgery and slowness of some of this rural setting. I don't know how rural it is, but it's not the most progressive place in the world that she's brought up in. It's going to drag her down, and she wants to break free from it. So she becomes alienated from a lot of her environment because she's got Sun, Uranus, Neptune. It doesn't fit in to this more grounded, day-to-day practical environment that she's in, where that's the emphasis. Also, the Neptune opposition Sun-Saturn, so Neptune at Sun-Saturn, we have a Sun-Saturn-Neptune pattern. That indicates a sincerity, a need to follow some kind of sincere, authentic spiritual path, a seeker. And and all of the hypocrisy, superficiality, the racism, for example. It ends up she gets picked on a lot when she's young. As she gets to be a teenager, she puts on weight. She's got terrible acne, pimples, which can be horrendous when you're a teenager. She's picked on. The Sun, Saturn, Neptune. She's just not able to get past all of this. And when we see the harmonic patterns, it's going to be even more obvious what's going on, which I'll explain in the next slide. So she's got a huge number of patterns going on in these midpoint patterns in this grand trine. And when you have midpoint patterns going off in three directions like this, it's not easy. Grand trines are supposed to be good. They're not so good. They're not so goody-goody and so on. When there are direct midpoint structures going on, I've seen this over and over again, it's very challenging. It pushes you hard, and it's extreme. And that's exactly what's happening to her. She's not fitting in to the good old normal life and, just the cooking and cleaning and fixing the cars and delivering the mail and, whatever. It's just not for her. And especially things like the racism and stuff, things like that are going on. Very hard, and getting picked on, very, very difficult. Now, what really pushes this over the top is that these planets that I just mentioned, Sun, Mercury, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, those are the 5 planets I just mentioned on the previous slide in that grand trine kind of pattern. They are in a 17th harmonic pattern simultaneously. And this may be a little hard to imagine if you're new to vibrational astrology, but what's going on is that these planets are in a T-square in the 17th harmonic. The 17th harmonic is the harmonic of empathy, compassion, of becoming a part of an. It's intercultural. It's cross-cultural. You blend, you move in, you explore. 17th harmonic is great at acting. We see it over and over and over again in actors, performers, people who cross cultural boundaries, which is exactly what she did. And it's this extremely hyper-sensitive nature. The Sun, Uranus, Neptune, the Sun, Saturn, extremely sensitive, sincere, not able to handle these conflicts and insincerities and hypocrisies. This intense sensitivity and visionary feeling of wanting to just float away and feel things. So there is empathy, the ability to act, to perform, to sympathize, to be a channel of others' feelings, which is exactly what she does in her music. We're going to see some examples of this. To cross cultural boundaries. So this is a big part of who Janis Joplin is as well. So what we see is that in understanding these musicians, it's not just the 11th, 5th, and 55th harmonics, sometimes 35th harmonics. It's also who the person is. And the performance aspect can pick up the 17th harmonic. This plays a big role in her life if she wasn't picked on so much. She had a lot of emotional scars, a lot of insecurities. She wasn't settled. Her soul wasn't settled. Her emotions weren't settled. Something wasn't right from those experiences, and it drove her to the drugs. It drove her to always feel like an outcast, and to step apart and to follow her dreams and visions and step outside the normal mundane life. Okay, so. I've already explained this. These are the midpoint structures I just talked about, and there are others. I'm not going to go over every single one, but very strong patterns going on in the 17th harmonic. So her extreme sensitivity, wanting an awakening experience now, inclined to drug use, tendency to have vivid or unusual dreams. This is a lot of who she is. Craving inspiration, wanting sincerity, not the glamour, hypocrisy, wanting to really help others. But the experiences that she had led to confusion and insecurity, which can happen especially with the Sun, Saturn, Neptune pattern. Here's a quote from Wikipedia. She stated that she was mostly shunned. As a teen, she became overweight and her skin broke out so badly she was left with deep scars which required dermabrasion. So these are deep. This is a really bad skin problem she had. Other kids at high school would routinely taunt her and call her names. Okay, this happens to a lot of kids, but with that 17th harmonic and the extreme level it was happening to, It just drove her to get out of there, to pursue her vision and her dreams. And we see she has extraordinary musical talent, and it led her to be the Janis Joplin that we know about. Okay. So she needs to share, experience empathy and compassion. Any attempt to build a bridge with people of color is ridiculed. She's a target of laughter. Just for loving the music from black culture, she's ridiculed for this. She describes herself as a misfit, and indeed she was. She's in search of a vision and sincerity, and she has a little guidance. Okay, she was often required to heroin, but she avoided LSD and marijuana, which I think is a combination of things. Her 35th harmonic, her desire to work, to perfect, that they would interfere. The heroin seemed to not interfere, at least not as much in the immediate sense. Also, she's so alienated, she probably just wanted to do something that's not part of the in thing. And, certainly people that use drugs, you're often using them to numb the pain, to escape from emotional hurt. Okay. Now, a little more information about Janis Joplin, and this reflects that very sensitive 17th harmonic, which was not developed well. Her parents, her teachers, the society in general did not assist her in developing that sensitivity. She could have explored, different religious paths and studied spiritualism or just ethics in an exciting and sincere way. So, but that didn't happen. She was just taunted and made to feel like she's just not cool, she's not with it. So the Joplins felt that Janis always needed more attention than their other children, with her mother stating, quote, she was unhappy and unsatisfied without receiving a lot of attention. The normal rapport wasn't adequate. As a teenager, she befriended a group of outcasts. As a teen, she became overweight and her skin broke out so badly. Da-da-da-da-da. Okay, so that Sun, Uranus, Neptune, the Sun, Saturn, Neptune, that whole big pattern, we see it, the neediness that developed as she didn't fit in. And here are some more quotes about her drug use increasing in a period of time, etc. In early 1965, Joplin's friends In early 1965, Joplin's friends in San Francisco, noticing the physical effects of her intravenous methamphetamine habit, she was described as skeletal and emaciated. So there are periods of time when she just pushed this over the edge. That 17th harmonic sensitive pattern was pushing her and pushing her and pushing her to get out of the insecurities, the limitations, and the hurt feelings that she had, and to wake up into this new life. Here's an interesting thing that reflects some of the Sun, Saturn, Neptune. I think this was a little bit of a hopeful sign in her life of finding a path, an ethic, a lifestyle that maybe would make more sense. At least it presented her with an option, although you could argue it would be just another cult and a lot of more insincerity. But I think this is an interesting story. Again, from Wikipedia. One of Joplin's earliest major performances in 1967 was the Mantra Rock Dance, a musical event held on January 29 at the Avalon Ballroom by the San Francisco Hare Krishna Temple. Janis Joplin and Big Brother is the name of the group, performed there along with the Hare Krishna founder, Bhaktivedanta Swami. So the founder was there, Allen Ginsberg, Moby Grape, the Grateful Dead, and they donated the proceeds to the Krishna Temple. So that, donating the proceeds, a benefit. Of course, she was at Woodstock, which is also kind of a benefit in some sense. You see the hope, the glimmer of doing something with purpose and meaning, but it never fully takes shape. She doesn't find a path where she feels really comfortable, and she's in some emotional pain, I think, and and the heavy reliance on drugs. She's not able to break it. Okay, so some more information about her. An interesting little story that appeared in the school newspaper. She went to the University of Texas at Austin for a while. Now this is interesting because I think this shows her 55th harmonic. Listen to this. The school paper called the Daily Texan ran a little story on her with the title, "She Dares to Be Different." And the article begins like this. She goes barefooted when she feels like it, wears Levi's to class because they're more comfortable, and carries her auto harp with her everywhere she goes, so that in case she gets the urge to break into song, it will be handy. Her name is Janis Joplin. This, carrying this auto harp, her creative, inspirational nature, I think, is really evident there. This is not just rebelliousness, oh, I'll be a hippie or something. She's got this creative impetus, that 55th harmonic, to creatively work with music. She's got her auto harp to perform and to feel something with the 17th harmonic. So she's following her instincts here to experience the vision, the imagination, and the creativity that she's capable of, and especially musically. So I think that really was a good step for her to have the courage to do that. Also, on the 17th harmonic, you'll find that people with these 17th harmonic patterns, they blend nicely, they feel things, they connect nicely. And here's a little story from a fellow who was a guitar player and got to play with Janis Joplin for a little bit. And here's his story later in life, when he's 61 years old, much later. And he talks about his time playing with Janis Joplin. And this, I think, reflects a lot of the beautiful qualities of this 17th harmonic, where she was able to perform and feel and move into an emotional space and express it with passion. He says about playing guitar for Janis, background guitar for her singing. We hardly needed to even practice her songs first, because I'd heard a lot of the old records, probably many of the same ones she'd studied, and besides, she was really good at taking cues and feeling when it was time for a guitar break, all that stuff. I've played a little music, and if you're familiar with this, there's certain people you play with, and you just get into a groove, like you just know when you're feeling, okay, I'll fade out here, do a little guitar break, I'll come back in. That ability to flow and connect, the beauty of her 17th harmonic pattern. And this guy probably has some too, and that's why they were able to connect so well with it. We both knew when the song was going to end, and it all came out great on the tape. She was a pro. She was very talented, a great voice. I was very impressed. I'm very impressed now at the old age of 61, just thinking about that scene and remembering how it went down. Okay, so this guy, I think, is very straightforward, very candid. He was a good musician. He got to play with some stars, and he said this lady, very talented, 55th harmonic, 35th harmonic, great voice. He was very impressed, and the ability to work with that flow, all of these qualities, and this whole story just makes perfect sense to me. This is what we're expecting. She is talented, she's gifted, and she's putting her heart into this, and he feels it. He really enjoyed playing guitar for her. Now, here's an interesting story about Janis Joplin developing her taste for the music that comes out of the black culture. One of the great female black singers is Odetta Holmes. Okay, so let's read this a little bit, because I think this also captures what the 17th harmonic was for Janis Joplin, and the specific T-square pattern in her chart. Odetta Holmes was an American singer, actress, guitarist, songwriter, and human rights activist, often referred to as the voice of the civil rights movement. Known for her blending of blues, jazz, and spirituals, Odetta was an important figure in the American folk music revival of the 1950s and 60s. Janis spent much of her adolescence listening to Odetta. Okay, so we've got civil rights movement, her sincerity, her seeking sincerity, Sun, Saturn, Neptune. Also her 35th harmonic, the talent that people like Odetta Holmes have, and her 55th harmonic, her seeking new creative expressions. Okay, Janis spent much of her adolescence listening to Odetta, and she was one of the first singers that Janis imitated when she started singing. Now listen to this part I've got in yellow here. Legend has it that Janis discovered that she could sing when she spontaneously started belting out an Odetta song. One night, tired of listening to her friends butcher one of Odetta's songs, so you can imagine this. She's with her friends. They're trying to sing an Odetta Holmes song, which is not going to be easy because Odetta Holmes is so talented, and they're butchering it. I mean, they're not singers. They're just having fun trying to imitate it. So Janis suddenly breaks out in a voice that sounded exactly like the famous singer. This is the Sun, Uranus, Neptune, Saturn, Mercury, the whole pattern, 17th harmonic. She just gets into it, and she becomes an Odetta Holmes. You can say she channels Odetta Holmes. This is what a highly sensitive 17th harmonic can do. We used to sing folk songs on our way driving anywhere. Well, after that, we still did, but it wasn't the same. We weren't all in the same class anymore, one of her friends recalled. No kidding. So we have here Janis Joplin with that highly sensitive thing, channeling, we can call it, Odetta Holmes. I mean, just getting right into the mood, that emotional space, absorbing it into herself, and with her 55th harmonic creativity, her 35th harmonic technique, everything coming together, she can do it. She can really do it. And, I think an important point here is the Saturn-Neptune, because this has meaning. This is important. This is civil rights. This is not a joke. This is something real, that people can be respected and appreciated for who they are. Okay, so that's my analysis of Janis Joplin. And the next person we're going to do in these 14 videos is Donovan. So if you want to continue on to the next one in order as I do them, you can click on this link to Donovan. Or remember that link that I have at the very beginning of this video to all 14 tutorial videos. That's in the first of these 14 videos in this series. Okay, my friends, thank you very much for listening. God bless. Namaste.